Right, good afternoon to Jamie Carragher and our special guest, John Terry, for this edition of Off Script. I'm delighted that we've got the pair of you together because you are both central figures in what was one of the most extraordinary rivalries between two clubs, which hadn't been there previously, probably hasn't happened since. But in the early noughties, or the mid-noughties, if you like, it seemed that Chelsea and Liverpool were playing each other every single week, and virtually in the semi-final as well, for about a period of 7 or 8 years. John, I'll start with you. Overall, just what was it like, that whole period, where you just seemed to draw each other time after time after time, and so many iconic and controversial moments in that particular fixture?
As an English team, you want to kind of avoid any English team, whether it's in the group stages or the knockout stages after that. And we ended up getting Liverpool in our group as well, because I think UEFA didn't kind of recognise that if Liverpool went and won it, or a team went and won it, then the team that finished outside the top 6 would then get a place in it. So Liverpool come in our group, if you remember rightly, as well. So even a few more games added up there. But the rivalry was really intense over the years. Obviously, myself, Carragher, Lamps and Stevie that were fighting for places in the England setup as well. The fans didn't like each other too much. For me, the rivalry was...
Neither did the players.
I've heard you say that before. I always respected you guys.
Well, John, I wanted to... Obviously, we were similar. You played, your whole career at Chelsea, me at Liverpool. I actually played Chelsea 47 times at the end of my career. So the opponent I came up against most, I always wondered where a lot of the animosity came from, was the fact that I always felt it frustrated yous because yous were so much better than us. I don't think we were ever on a level playing field. I think yous always were a better side. I think we knew that, you knew that. But the fact we could get results against you at that time, certainly in the Jose's era, when maybe even Manchester United, who were better than us, and Arsenal were better than us, you seemed to beat them with ease at that time. Was that a little bit part of it? Because there was the frustration that you couldn't beat us, even though you knew that you were probably far better than us in a lot of areas.
Yeah, it was actually. And both managers made a big thing of that as well. I remember the team talk that kind of Mourinho gave before we played after we won the league. And I think we were something like 20 or 31 points in front. And he was going, there's no way you can lose this game against these. But he couldn't even say the name Liverpool. He couldn't even pronounce the team. It was like, you do not lose to these today. We're so much better than these. And that still kind of sticks there as well. So it was a frustration, because you've kind of always found a way to really kind of settle the game in the away fixtures, in their big Champions League games as well. But them home games were like, for us going into the stadium with the support, I've said over the years that the atmosphere was probably the best I've ever experienced as a player. But yeah, frustration was probably the word, because we obviously won leagues and stuff like that. So I think we felt we was the better side, but just couldn't break you down a lot of the time, and obviously got knocked out in a couple of occasions.
Do you think there was anything in the fact with the managers both coming to England at the same time, both being almost like the new kids on the block? You had Ferguson, you had Wenger here, and these two managers, Jose won the Champions League, Rafa won the UEFA Cup before he came. And it was almost that, Jose dominated the coverage for 2 or 3 years. He was massive, wasn't he, within the Premier League. And the fact that it was now and again mentioned, Rafa tactically did this, or he was cleverer here. I always thought that made Jose actually do different things in games. So sometimes the team sheet would come in, and when we were playing you, and I'd be like, why is he playing? Or what are they doing here? Or it almost feel like he changed sometimes for Liverpool. And I didn't know if that was something to do with maybe Jose feeling that he had to do something different because of Rafa. Because I always felt if you played your normal 4-3-3 with the 2 wingers, and you were a better team than us, really. But it just felt that he's changed at times.
I think he just felt as well that, I think he respected obviously the players you had yourself, Stevie. So I think at times he did change, but mentally from us, he was like, listen, be patient throughout the 90 minutes or the 2 legs. We will come through the better team and the stronger team. So we don't need to go out there and win it from the outset. So in them games, he definitely showed you a little bit more respect. And I think that's a credit to Liverpool, to be honest, and the team you had, because even in the league, I thought you was a lot better than what you kind of achieved on a consistent basis, kind of year in, year out. But he definitely respected it. He hated, him and Rafa had that rivalry, didn't they? They hated each other, really.
He hated them.
And they hated each other. You said that. But they did. It was like that. because we come up against Liverpool so often and him, it was that rivalry. He didn't do it because of Rafa, or I think it was out of respect of the team that he had.
Well, I think one of the best stories I got told was by Wayne Rooney, really, and I think it shows probably the animosity towards Chelsea at that time from a lot of clubs. And I'm not sort of having a go at it. I think the way Jose was, he was so brash, he was so much on the front foot, he was cocky, he was arrogant, he was good looking. He seemed to have everything at that time. You know, at the team, virtually, I think he's lost one game in that first season. I think it was away at Man City. But Wayne Rooney told me a story that I think in the semi-final they were playing. Or who had they played? Well, basically, when we beat you in a semi-final somewhere, I think it was 2007. Sorry, so we played you in 2007, and I think they were playing Milan, and Milan ended up beating them. But we must have played the night before. And Wayne Rooney told me when we won on penalties, all the Man United, like watching it together in the hotel, all erupted and cheered. You think Liverpool, Man United, the rivalry. So I think it just shows probably how much or how respected you were as a team and feared, but also how much sort of Jose and Chelsea at that time got under so many teams' skin.
I think we was probably disliked by probably the whole of the Premier League. I think with Roman coming in at that time and kind of injecting the money that he injected and the players that he brought in and what Mourinho was about as well, it was like within those meetings that we had, it was like it's us against them. Even it's us against the kind of our own kind of football club. We want to build a fortress and everyone hates us. And he kind of blew that up in his interviews and stuff. But within that group, he made us feel kind of so together and so connected that we could kind of go out and beat anyone. So regardless of kind of the fear factors or how good other teams were, we always had that sense that we could go and win any game.
You had that kind of band of brothers feel about you, John. In fact, Steve Sidwell was reflecting on it the other day, and he said when Jose left the first time, he said there were tears in the dressing room. Yourself, Frank, everybody. That's how strong the bond was. Is that true?
Yeah, we was all in tears, and it was one of their moments that there was obviously whispers going around at the time. We wasn't performing well. We wasn't doing as well in the league. And then he kind of come in and said, that's it, guys, I've been sacked, and kind of went around, give everyone a hug and a cuddle. But like Siddy said there, like full grown men, like crying their eyes out, was thinking, where do we go from here? We'd had somebody, probably like a father figure that had kind of guided us. And we was concerned for him. We actually spoke to the board and said, listen, we want him to stay. Like, can we not bring him back? It's a rash decision. He's the best we've worked with. Listen, they've made their mind up, and that was it. And unfortunately he left. But yeah, full-grown men in absolute tears.
John, you know, on that, it takes me back also, if you think of his time at Inter Milan, when he won. I think he won the Champions League in the Bernabeu against Bayern Munich. I think you see him with Materazzi after the game and players getting emotional. So he had something special, Jose Mourinho, certainly with you as players. I saw that with Inter Milan. I'm sure the same was with Porto. What was that connect that made it so different and special? But also that connect with players now is something that Jose is actually criticised for and questioned for now. So what do you think the difference is, or what has changed? Is that actually the players he's dealing with now have changed?
I think you could probably put that down to millennials or probably players nowadays a little bit. I think he was so demanding on the group, and he pushed us probably to our limits at times as well, where sometimes you thought, like, it's probably not until you're at this age and you're probably finished, you realise why he done what he done at certain times. But even still, you'd be sitting there at kind of night, it'd be 8 o'clock, you get a message from him. How's Tony and the kids? Tell Georgie and Summer I love them. You know, how's their school going? And it was like, oh my God, never had that from a manager. And it was all them little things. Even now I get a message or a picture or video. Hi, Georgie and Summer. Just saying hello to the kids. My kids absolutely idolise him, you know, and that's because of the way and the connect that probably people don't see from the outside world. But you kind of get in and go, I sit next to Lamps and I go, Lamps, I got a message from the gaffer last night, like thinking I'm the special one. Lamps would go, yes, so did I. Didier would go, oh, I did as well. He was doing it.
He just forwarded the same one on.
So
he was doing it for everyone.
How difficult was it then, John, or otherwise, when Rafa Benitez came to Chelsea, who had been for a period Jose Mourinho's nemesis?
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. I have to be honest. When he first came, I was actually really looking forward to working with Rafa initially. You know,
did you find it easy to put aside, because don't forget, do you remember at the time he said Arsenal play a lot better football than Chelsea, because that whole period between Liverpool and Chelsea, it was very intense and it did become personal. They didn't like each other at all. He said some fairly damning things about your team. He had a pop at the band of brothers.
That's why the supporters kind of never took to him and wanted him out from day one. They made that very clear from the outset. You could say he was quite successful. We won the Europa League under him, of course, but for me personally, you want to kind of develop and learn. So I'd seen obviously tactically how he'd set up against us previously and stuff. So like everything, you give everyone a fair chance, and it's down to them to kind of prove to you otherwise. And we just didn't get on from day one personally, to be honest. And every kind of meeting we had, it was, we used to do this at Liverpool and we done this. And after
John
the first
Terry,
meeting,
why aren't you like Jamie Carragher? Carragher used to do this. Carragher never got caught there.
You laugh. That's what it used to be like. Just move a yard there, and it's like. But it wasn't. I had to have a few conversations with him and say, like, Gaffer, you have to forget Liverpool. You can't keep saying you're at Chelsea now. It's not going down well with lads. And kind of, listen, we didn't get on from day one. He obviously left me out at certain times. I didn't play much under him. But from a tactical point of view, I was looking forward to working with him.
Do you think he left you out because of those chats you had with him? Because it's interesting, because I think at Chelsea, you just said before that you spoke to Rome and all the boards on Jose Mourinho when he left, and you've been in to have a chat with Rafa about maybe how he was chatting to certain players. We probably never really did that at Liverpool, really. Maybe because me and Stevie were there for so long, or whatever it may be. We never really had those conversations with Rafa or different managers. It was almost, what the manager said we did. So do you think it was almost like a personal thing, because you'd question him? I mean, it's not going to be a case of you not being good enough for Chelsea.
It certainly didn't go down well. It definitely didn't help the cause. But when he first came, I remember getting injured against Liverpool, and then he come after that. So I was injured when he arrived, and then I struggled, to be fair. I don't know if you remember the Suarez tackle on me. I scored, it was 1-0 at the Bridge, I think. And then after that, he then come in. So I was out for probably about 6 weeks before he come in. But I was kind of working back towards fitness. And I kind of played a couple of games. I played away at Fulham in the league. I scored 2. He dropped me for the next game. And Chelsea had a big game. We had the Europa League coming up. It's kind of all them little bits that added up. But again, listen, I trained as I always did, and give everyone the respect that they give me.
During that period, that 6 or 7 years, there were 5 semi-finals and a final between the two. But of course, there's one game which everybody focuses on, the famous ghost goal. That was only the second in the series. How much do you think that win, the contentious nature of the win, how much do you think that ramped up the atmosphere, indeed the animosity between both clubs and supporters for the subsequent games, the very nature of the victory?
I think massively, because it wasn't a goal, was it? It wasn't over the line.
You didn't say that at the time.
I was probably the closest one to it as well. And it's hard to say. And was it over? Was it not? But yeah, I think it did, because people kind of wasn't sure. Technology's improved since then, and we'd know today. But whatever it was, Liverpool had something on us, and it did frustrate us, like Carragher said earlier. And the animosity was spiced up. The atmosphere at Anfield was always like out of this world. Same back at the Bridge as well. We had some kind of real big ding-dongs along the way. But yeah, that was the start of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the animosity from our side, I think a lot was basically Chelsea were trying to take our captain, our local boy, Steven Gerrard, our top player. And we played the Carling Cup final, I think, in the February. And Chelsea had won that 3-2. And afterwards, I think there was Jose come round the players and shaking all the Liverpool players' hands. And I think he did something to Liverpool supporters at the side of the pitch when Chelsea equalised. So it was always just sort of brewing, really. And I just think when those semi-finals came out, and then we got a great result, 0-0. I mean, it shows the season we had that year, and that we'd lost 3 days before away to Crystal Palace, who went down, and then we went to the best team in the league and got 0-0. That summed up the season, really. But the atmosphere at Anfield, I always say, was the best atmosphere I played in. And I think it helped because it was Chelsea. There was so much animosity towards probably Jose Mourinho more than anyone, I would say. But the ghost goal, I mean, no one can ever prove whether it was or it wasn't over the line. But I hope if it ever is proven, I hope it's not over the line to make you feel even worse.
I
didn't realise we was going there, Cara.
I don't think he's going to feel any differently whatsoever. I mean, you touched on it there, John. There was that period where there was strong talk with Steven Gerrard, strongly linked with Chelsea at the time. What was your thoughts at the time about the possibility of Steven Gerrard being at Chelsea?
Well, of course, he was one of the best players in the world at the time and kind of doing everything possibly with Liverpool. So Mourinho expressed his interest to the England players and said, can we have a kind of quiet word with Stevie, which we did. Stevie literally said from day one he didn't want to go, but I think at the end he kind of got turned, like he said recently. But he was one of the best players in the world at the time, so 100% he would have made us stronger and an even better side than we was.
I actually think it's well documented, this situation with Stevie. It happened, I think, a couple of times where he was on the verge of going to Chelsea, and all it was the fact that he was fearing that his career wouldn't go on and have the heights of John Terry's or Frank Lampard's or Paul Scholes and different players at Manchester United, and Liverpool wouldn't be successful in competing for the top honours, really. But I actually think a more interesting thing, John, because I said the Stevie one's well documented, is maybe how close you come to Liverpool. Was it that 2003-4, or was that? I just remember you saying something when we were away in Chelsea. I think we're having financial problems at the time, well before Roman came in. Was Liverpool sniffing around you or trying to get you at that stage?
I actually forgot because I answered the question the other day about Huddersfield and Man City coming in. But who was the manager 2002-3 for you?
Houllier.
Yeah, Gerrard Houllier. So I didn't play in 2002-3, the last game of the season, the big game. I didn't play. I was out injured when we won 2-1, secured fourth place. And then obviously Roman coming after that. But in the tunnel, Houllier had said to me, listen, whatever way this game goes, if you don't kind of qualify, would be interested kind of thing. I actually forgot about that, Cara. So yeah, great memory. But it was a brief conversation in the tunnel at Stamford Bridge. But I was like, listen, Chelsea's my club, and didn't kind of go any further than that, to be honest.
Yeah. Cara, different to Stevie, obviously, but how did you feel when Fernando Torres went to Chelsea?
I couldn't believe it. And what I mean by that was I knew we'd kidded Chelsea. I'd played with Torres then for probably the last 12 months. He was a shadow of his former self. I think for 18 months at Liverpool, he was the best striker in the world. And I think he had such a good record against Chelsea that obviously stuck in the owner's mind. Not so much a manager, because the manager changed so often at Chelsea, but I think at that stage, Chelsea was still a club where the owner was maybe buying players who he wanted. I think Shevchenko was a similar case as well. And what happened for us, and was very fortunate for Liverpool, was we played Chelsea that season. We weren't having a great season. Torres was having a really poor time, but he scored 2 against Chelsea. I think we won 2-0. I think that was under Roy Hodgson, 2 or 3-0 at Anfield. And I think the decision was probably made then for Roman Abramovich. As soon as January comes, we're going for Fernando Torres. Now, Fernando Torres at that, 50 million was like major money at that stage. And I think we were all in a state of shock. Listen, Guto Torres was gone, but I think we all knew he was never going to be the same player, but we could not believe we'd got 50 million. And we ended up probably done something similar ourselves in some ways in buying Andy Carroll for 35 million, really. But we did get Luis Suarez out of it. So the money where Torres went, we got 2 strikers out of it. But I was not surprised at all that it didn't go well, Fernando Torres.
It's interesting, Cara, isn't it? Because you touched on it then, that he wasn't in great form before that game, that he scored the 2 goals either. And then he goes and scores the 2 against us. But from a Chelsea point of view, obviously he was the one that I hated playing against him. He always seemed to score at Anfield or at the Bridge. And it was that kind of one player that Roman would kind of always ask about, and is he tough to play against? And Yossi was quite close to him. So Yossi was at Chelsea and was like, lads, Fernando's on his way. And we was like, no way. We're absolutely going to dominate the Premier League in Europe for the next 5-6 years. This is it. That was our fault from obviously playing against him and seeing it. So it's really interesting to hear that from your side.
I remember his first game was actually against Liverpool. And it was my first game back after I'd dislocated my shoulder. And I think Ancelotti put him straight in. And I always thought it was a massive mistake, really, putting them, because it was Liverpool, so the Liverpool fans giving him stick. The Chelsea fans still not, I wouldn't say not loving him, but obviously he's a new player. They don't know too much about him. And I just thought he should never have played in that game. I know he's the big money sign. Would that have been pressure from above Carlo Ancelotti to play him in that game? Because I always thought it was a massive mistake. We won the game. He got a lot of stick, and I'm sure it affected him, that.
I'm not sure it would have been pressure from above. Carlo definitely wasn't that type of manager to kind of listen to the board if they was kind of pushing. But we kind of changed our formation, really, because I think it was Didier and Fernando up front with Anelka just behind, wasn't it? So it was like we had three unbelievable strikers, and we was trying to kind of fit them in all together, kind of thing. But like you said, we had enough kind of firepower in Didier and Anelka, whether Anelka was wide or just behind, to kind of then bring Nando on later on the game, which would have been more of an impact for him, I think. But yeah, like it just seemed after that game, his confidence was shot to bits, to be honest.
What do you think overall, when either of you got the upper hand over the other? Was it down to tactics? Was it down to personnel? Was it down to personality? In this incredible run of games, and I'll start with you first, Cara. What brought the victories? You know, because it turned into like almost like the Merseyside derby or Liverpool Manchester United or whatever. It had that intensity about it. So what did you need to come out on top in these games?
You needed not to make mistakes. Listen, they weren't probably great watchers for the neutral, these games. But as you said, it was more the intensity of what was at stake in these games. And obviously, John was at one end, I was at the other defender, and we were possibly teams renowned for our defensive records more than our attacking records, really, or being the most entertaining teams on the eye. Possibly Manchester United or Arsenal were a better watch, if you like. But I always felt going into that game that if you made a mistake, you were going to lose, because Chelsea were too good defensively, and possibly, hopefully they felt something similar to us. But if you look at a lot of the games, the 0-0 or 1-0, the odds won, it goes a bit mad. I think there was a Champions League 1-4-4 or something. But more often than not, you knew to beat Chelsea, you had to keep a clean sheet, and I'm sure that's something similar what they felt going into those games as well. So it always felt to me it was real pressure for a defender, in that you couldn't make a mistake, really. I think whoever made the least mistakes in those games ended up coming out on top.
Yeah, would probably have to agree as well, to be honest, because again, just remembering Mourinho's kind of team meetings before the games and stuff like that, it was like, listen, both unbelievable defensively, but he just felt that Lamps, Didier, especially Didier, had a little something over you guys as well, kind of scoring big goals on big nights. But yeah, I mean, when we look back at going, you know, as a back four, we didn't make many mistakes. You guys didn't individually as well. So there wasn't them kind of errors in them big games at kind of any points, really. But we always just felt that we had enough firepower that if you kind of held out first leg like you did at the Bridge, that going back to Anfield, we would still have enough. But at times, we just couldn't break you down or kind of shut you out.
You mentioned Anfield there, John, and you know, I'm obviously it's the same as you. What Stamford Bridge is, Anfield for me is. But what is it like? As you obviously you're on European night for an opposing player, you know, you're coming out into that atmosphere. Do you think it affects people, or do you think some of it is a little bit of a myth, or there is something there?
Carragher, I'm the same as you. That night, 2004-05, was probably one of the best atmospheres, if not the best, that I've played in. And to be honest, Anfield's a special stadium anyway. And for me, kind of going there and experiencing that, I always kind of thrived on, you know, getting booed as a team, as an individual, and kind of that inspired me a little bit. That was probably slightly intimidating for me. And I was okay with that side of it. There'd be a lot of players throughout the league that go, I'm not sure about this today, and probably still do today when they go to Anfield or these big stadiums and get booed from the outset. The supporters can make a big difference. And we felt that Liverpool under the lights in those Champions League games made a hell of a difference. You know, but again, we had big characters in our lineup that would stand there and go, this is what it's all about tonight. This is why this is what we live for. You know, so we was okay from that side of it, but still you kind of look back now and just realise how special they were.
You did actually play together as a pair for England. How did you dovetail? How did you do? What was the understanding like?
I remember.
Go on.
Sorry, John. Go on.
I was going to say, I was going to go and win everything. You could sweep up behind with your face.
Yeah. He was basically, I'll let John do everything because he was better than me at everything. So I'll just hang back and let him take all the responsibility. But I think, did we play in the back three in Croatia? I think we played together there, didn't we?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who the centre back was.
God, I can't think. And then we played in South Africa.
Oh, yeah, at the World Cup. I only played one game. I got 2 yellow cards. I come on for a half and then I played one. And, obviously, I missed the I was really disappointed I missed it. I thought I would come back in for the Germany game. But Fabio kept Matty Upson. He actually scored in the game, yeah. But sometimes it's one of those games when it's finished, you think that was a good one to miss that.
I mean, the actual tally between you, the actual times you faced each other, you faced each other 30 times in all comps, with JT winning 13 times. There were 7 draws, and Carragher picked up 10 wins. So a very, very evenly fought contest. But probably what hurts Carragher the most was the last time you faced each other was 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge, and JT scored.
Oh, did he? I got the assist though for our goal. I think Suarez scored at the back post. I got a flick on at the near post. I'm just trying to think that last game. I think what did we do there? Yeah, we had a lot of young lads. I think Andre Wisdom was playing that day. But listen, I think Chelsea. I mean, what I would say about Chelsea was, even though I faced them and they were one of the top sides I come up against, I always felt more comfortable at Stamford Bridge than I did at Arsenal or Old Trafford, because I think similar to Anfield, it just feels a lot tighter, the pitch at Stamford Bridge. You always feel like you've got people around you, where at times when you played at Old Trafford, it felt like you were playing on your own. So even though Chelsea, as I said, had some great players, I always felt okay at Stamford Bridge to some extent.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because a lot of teams, I think in them first 2 years or them early years when Mourinho was there, teams didn't probably realise how good we were as a team. So we could play, we could mix it. I think as it went on, teams then come to Stamford Bridge, hence why, Mourinho lost his job and would kind of sit there with 5, sit there at times with 10 men behind the ball. And then because Stamford Bridge is really tight, the pitch, you then kind of trying to find a way to break teams or suck people out, and you can't because it's so tight and narrow. But as you say, you go away to the Emirates or Old Trafford and places like that. Even Villa Park's a big pitch. You can break teams down easier. And Chelsea was always very tight. So I think over the years or later on through that spell, that kind of went against us really as well.
It's real truth time now. Again, I'll go to Jamie first of all on this one. Real truth time. In the team meetings, you talk about various players. What did Rafa say about JT, and also what did Joe say about Carragher in the team meetings? Obviously to your strikers, more than to you.
Well, I'll start because I've got actually a funny story about this. I remember one day this season had started and Rafa had done the press, and we were playing Chelsea a few days later, and Rafa, me and Stevie Gerrard jumped in like a taxi. We were going to Anfield to do a promotion for something, so he said, I've just done the press there. And I said, what were they asking about, Chelsea or Jose? And he said, yeah, they were asking about you. I said, oh, yeah. I said, what did you say? I said, you're as good as John Terry. And when he said that, he went like that. And because Stevie was there, it just absolutely killed me. And you just think, oh, he's done me there. So I think he felt John Terry always had the edge on me.
He definitely didn't show me that when he come to Chelsea. He said he wished you'd had Carragher there.
Can you remember, John, though, what Jose would have said about Carragher in terms of your attack?
You know what? He was confident in getting the ball up to Didier. Like I say, I think Fernando had that against us. Seemed to always score against us. Didier kind of had that against us. So Mourinho would never kind of worry about opposition or try and single players out. He'd kind of concentrate on the opposite side and go looking at us and individuals. And he'd say, get it up to Didier, and I fancy him against the centre halves. That was him. And then Didier would kind of go, yeah, get it up to me. Didier would fancy himself against anyone. But like I say, even kind of it went up. Liverpool were difficult to break down. Defensively, going forward, they had so much pace and acceleration and everything throughout the midfield. So many legs in midfield as well. So many good technical players. we just found it tough to break teams down. So you couldn't even identify an individual of going, let's target him.
I think John used to come up a lot in our team talks, I would say, before the game, because he was so dominant set piece wise, certainly in an attacking sense for Chelsea. And we used to get a lot of, not so much criticism, but a lot of scrutiny on zonal mark and man marking. And I always remember one game, we did some, I tried to man mark it on a corner, but we still did zonal everywhere else. On the first corner, you beat me in the air and headed it down, and someone scored in front of the keeper. But thankfully for me, it was offside, or we got away with it basically. But I was asked to try and stop you, but that idea went right out the window after about 5 minutes in the first game, and you just dominated me for aerial, really. So you used to come up a lot in terms of that, really. I mean, we used to speak a lot about your Chelsea team and getting Stevie Gerrard in the positions either side of Makelele, because you played that 4-3-3, and whether it was Lamps or Thiago or Essien, they're sort of bombing on. And at times, maybe Makelele could be left isolated, and he used to play very central. And it was always trying to get Stevie in those pockets, either side, inside right, inside left, because obviously with you and Carvalho there, you know, myself as well, you don't really want to be getting dragged in there with midfield players. So that was a thing with us, really. And also, we were quite direct against Jews, deliberately so, because we always felt he was so powerful in midfield that if we played into midfield and lost it, Hughes are possibly the best team in Europe at that time, with Duff and Robin and Drogba on the counter-attack. So for us, it was make sure there's no counter-attack in that game. And the way to counter the opposition having counters is to go direct, because the second ball is always dropping, you know, obviously towards the edge of their box or in midfield.
It's interesting, that, Carragher, as well, because like I say, a lot of teams would come to the Bridge and kind of sit back and get bodies behind the ball. It felt like in them games at the Bridge, especially, like you say, whether it's Nando or Suarez up front, you had Kai at one side, you know, you had Stevie kind of, and we'd kind of go on the counter attack. And defensively, naturally, you go, right, Liverpool drop back. We've got one striker between the three of us. Makelele's just in front, perfect. And it was a case of going, Kite's not really tracking back massively. Stevie's kind of hovering in between. And all of a sudden, now we're kind of 3v3. I'm not comfortable as a centre half here to kind of stay here. So all of a sudden, you go, right, Essien, come back just to get an overload. Now, defensively, that's great because we're solid, but then going forward, we're kind of limiting what one of our big strengths were as well. So I think that causes problems. So that's interesting to hear that from your side as well.
I mean, John, you can hear that Carragher holds you in the highest esteem. He's always said what's a top class.
Oh no, Jeff, this is all gone.
No,
I
because I'll just about to.
No, Jeff. I did Team of the Decade on Monday Night Football, and I left John out. Oh, was you going to set him up? Was you setting him up then?
Exactly that, Carragher. So, John, how surprised were you when a man who's laid you all of these compliments leaves you out of his Team of the Decade?
Jeff, I had to have a double take. I couldn't believe it.
He ended up on my Instagram arguing with all people on the comments.
I mean, that's just outrageous, John, is it? There's no respect there.
Carragher knows the respect both ways. He knows that.
He was captain of the Team of the decade before. He was captain of that team, but he just missed out on this.
To be fair, I understand why I wasn't in it. I'd only won 3 Premier Leagues then and 4 FA Cups. So listen, I
understand it. Well, the big question is, John, would Carragher have been in your Team of the Decade?
Listen, I said that when I done Monday Night Football with Carragher as well, I got a lot of stick for putting Carragher in my team. You know, because I was on the show, people thought I put him in. But no, but you know, because I was on the show, I think people thought, you put him in because you was on the show with him. I wasn't, and I wish we'd have played together more at England, Carragher, to be honest. I thought we had a good kind of rapport and relationship. I thought before this interview, anyway. I didn't realise you hated us as much as you did, but I thought we kind of got on well, and our understand on the training pitch was really good. I felt so. Unfortunately, we didn't, but I would definitely have liked to. Yeah, and I do. Listen, I think you was a great defender for me. Yeah,
I mean, the England one is interesting. I've always said this, and I always feel you were a better version of me, to be honest. I mean, listen, I'm sure I always feel good players can play together, but I think we were similar in so many ways, and I think that partnership you had with Rio was probably as good as anything anywhere at international level. We always talk about the golden generation not achieving what they should have, but if you actually look at what the actual defence did, and you think of 2006, going down to 10 men. We still kept a clean sheet in that game. So when we talk about the golden generation, I always feel it's more the offensive players who probably never showed as much as what they showed in the Premier League. I always felt yourself and Rio, even if you go back to 2004, I think it was you and Sol at centre-back in that Portugal game as well. So I don't think they ever had problems defensively. So I think, yourself, Rio, Sol Campbell, who were the three standout centre-backs really. I was probably the fourth one in the probably 2005, 2006. And I could have no complaints about that decision. But in terms of how Hughes performed for England, I always think when we talk about that era of maybe we should have done more, that group of generation of players, I always feel half the players did their job in some ways because, as I said, we were so strong defensively in those tournaments.
Yeah, it's difficult as well in them big tournaments, like I said, about playing you guys as well. You kind of don't want to commit too many bodies forward as well. So at times we was probably a little bit too kind of defensive as well. And probably we had 3, if not 4 of the best midfield players in the world in Stevie Lamb, Scholesy, and did we kind of restrict them going that way and kind of make them a little bit more defensive to protect us? So yeah, we was tight defensively, but I think the midfielders still had a part to play in that, even though they didn't kind of do that going forward. But yeah, I think in that time as well, there was obviously myself, Rio, that was playing more regular. And then obviously when Rio got banned and I played alongside Sol, there was obviously yourself, Ledley King, that was in the round it. So defensively, we always felt really strong. We had Ashton Bridgie, we had Jono, right back. You could play right back as well. Defensively, we always felt kind of sound and solid. It was in the attacking areas that I felt if we got an injury, we'd kind of struggle a little bit.
But what do you think looking back at that time then, John, your time with England in those tournaments? And as I said, it gets a lot of scrutiny on it with obviously the Ericsson years and maybe not doing as well as we could have. I mean, I always hear probably Frank or Rio or maybe even Stevie talk about the system and setups and different things. I mean, I haven't heard you too much on that. Is there anything you look at in England and you think, I wish we'd have done that. I wish that would have been different and that could have made the difference?
I always felt personally that going in, you kind of finish the season probably in your peak fitness and in your best condition. And then we kind of always had 2 or 3 weeks off, if you remember rightly, before those tournaments. So you'd have 2 or 3 weeks off. And like lads now, it don't matter how much running you go and do or how much fitness work you go and do. When you come back, you're going to be miles off it from a playing point of view. And we always used to play catch up on whatever manager that was under the 4, 5, 6 managers I played under with England. You go back, you then try and do some runs, which then will make you even more tired after the season you've just had playing sometimes 60, 65 games. You then kind of not get your sharpness. So the tournament arrives kind of 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and you're nowhere near your peak fitness. You then need to get 4 or 5 games before you get your fitness. By that time, we're past the group stage in the quarterfinal, we're out. So just as we're getting our main fitness and we're going again, we're kind of out the tournament. When I was England captain, I said to the FA, we should delay our season and put it back a little bit further, stretch it out slightly. So you finish the season, 5 days later, we go to a Portugal and we've got our first game again in the group. So everyone's, even though it's the end of the season, you're going to feel a little bit tired, but you never get that sharpness back. So for me, just by delaying it and going into a tournament like that, I felt would have benefited us more, but nobody listened.
Well, nothing's changed, has it, John? Unfortunately,
no, nothing has. I don't know if you felt the same, Carragher, as well. It's like when you go back pre-season. If you can do all the running you want, kind of off-season, you go back, you can do laps of the pitch, sharp work, ball work. First game of the season, you're like, I'm miles off it here, and it probably takes you 4 or 5 games to really find your feet.
Yeah, I mean, I remember with the England one where a lot of the time I got in the squad because I could play right back as well, as you just mentioned. So it meant the manager could bring an extra attacker, so I could cover centre back and right back. And I remember in 2006 we played, I think it was Trinidad and Tobago. I think it was where Crouchy scored the header.
Yeah.
And I was playing right back, and the sun was sweltering, and I actually got in the ice bath at half time. That's always my only recollection of actually World Cups, really, just how hot it was and difficult it was for me going from centre back to right back and actually dealing with the running there. I don't really look back at my England career of actually going to World Cups and say I actually enjoyed it, to be honest. And a lot of it was that. You never felt you could give your best. I always just felt tired because the end of the season, but I always think the thing for me is I always felt as if I was playing a slightly different position and I just wasn't used to that running, having not done it all season. I just thought, brings back nightmares. World Cup.
Made you appreciate being a centre half.
Oh, yeah, that cover. We all want that. Go get back early in front.
John, it's been absolutely fabulous to chat to you. Bring back memories of what seemed to be two clubs locked in an eternal battle from the mid-2000s. Fantastic stuff. Hopefully, football will be back soon. But for now, for myself, and I know also from Jamie, thank you so much for joining Off Script, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Pleasure, guys. Thank you.